Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another round of Mind Your Puckin' Business with your host, Jeffrey Krentzman.
Thank you, Dougie Sticks. Coming to you, as always, from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County, New Jersey. This is the Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast, brought to you, of course, by our good friends at the Bamboozle Project. A little bit of a white, snowy Bergen County this morning. Had our first snowfall of the season. And in typical fashion,
Yes.
the meteorologists seem to have gotten it wrong and overblew what it was going to be.
Oh, yes.
And wasn't that bad coming into the studio this morning. So check out the bamboozleproject.com. Website is across your screen if you're following on the video feed. Check them out. Use promo code MYPB. Save yourself 25% off. And I would think that the people that were smart enough to get the winter hats this year, in this area at least, are very thankful they did this morning, as they were off cleaning off about 3 or 4 inches of snow this morning. You can send us your questions at any time during the week, during the weekend. We check it all the time. That's the beauty of modern technology, folks. That is mypbshow@gmail.com. You can send us your stuff there. Or you can do what is becoming increasingly popular, and that is DMing us or sending us comments on Instagram, on our Instagram page, which is also very easy for you to remember, at Mind Your Pucking Business. And I can see that the graphics team here at Undefeated Media has kind of done a little bit of a refresh when I look at that graphic across the screen. I like it.
Trying new things.
Looks very good. I like it. This is episode number 107, Ciento y Siete on the Spanish dial. So we appreciate you tuning in. And you can tune into us in a variety of different ways. You can listen on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, if you want to see the video feed of the show. How are we?
Yeah, I'm good. A little cold, a little nippy, but we're good.
It happens. It happens. Yeah. And I believe it's going to warm up. This is going to be short-lived. So we'll deal with it. If this is the worst we've have to deal with for winter 2022-2023, I think we'll take it. This is
all we had to deal with.
If this is all we got to
2 inches of snow.
If this is it. This is all we got to do. And credit to the Undefeated Media staff here, that they are, really in on time today. Sometimes delayed opening school, you can take a little bit slow. The Undefeated Media parking lot outside, packed. 9:05 this morning.
Ready to rock.
Like you wouldn't even know that it snowed.
Yes.
All right, so we'll get to some comments already. I see them coming in, and we haven't even gotten to it. Michael, we will get to it in a minute, I promise you. There is so much going on with the New York Rangers right now. It is incredible. I don't know where to start, and I also was thinking driving in today, we were just on last week, and for all this stuff, all in a matter of a week, there's so many issues, so many things, so many topics. We're going to be joined by an NHL guest in a little bit. We'll talk some trade deadline stuff. But let's go through what I want to do, and I think the easiest way to do this is to kind of go in chronological order of the week when we were last on.
Mm-hmm.
We were on last Tuesday. The Rangers went out to Detroit on Thursday and played terribly. They lost 4-1. Igor was in net. Some of his struggles that he's had recently continued. They went to Washington on Saturday. Ironically, I was at the game. I drove down with my son. The Rangers looked awful on Saturday. And one thing in the game on Saturday that is not getting talked enough about with everything else going on is how important Ryan Lindgren is to the team. Ryan Lindgren left the game in the first period on a check by TJ Oshie. I do not have an opinion on this play, whether it was dirty or not. We had some people asking me on DM.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't come to a consensus on myself. If I
saw that. It was like the first period where he put him into the boards, like his head went into the railing or something.
Yeah, upper body injury.
And then he fought right after.
Very good. Yeah. And Tyler and I were sitting right behind the glass, actually, of where the fight happened with Mark Goudreau. So I couldn't come to a consensus if it was a dirty hit by TJ Oshie. TJ Oshie is not a dirty player, but I will say this. Ryan Lindgren left the game, and then wouldn't you know it, about four goals later in the second period, you realize how important Ryan Lindgren is to the team.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Lindgren, thankfully, if you want to believe what the Rangers are saying, and again, teams are not always truthful with injuries. We know this across all 4 major sports, but they seem to say that Ryan Lindgren is out more of a short term rather than long-term, because if he was out long-term, and we knew that he was out long-term, that would be another topic we would have to cover today that would be difficult to do. So thankfully, it seems like Ryan Lindgren escaped long-term harm on that play.
You were there. I was watching on TV, so you didn't get to see like the mic'd up version. I don't think he did it on purpose. Like you hear him do it, like the play happens and he's on top of the guy. And he's like, "Oh shit, man, I'm sorry." Like,
so
and he's like trying to help him up. He didn't. I don't think he tried to do it on purpose.
Where Tyler and I were sitting, the one section of the ice that we couldn't see well was exactly in front of the benches where the hit happened.
Mhm.
So I didn't see it. I saw the replays again. TJ Oshie's not a dirty player. If you're an American, you have to love TJ Oshie because he had those famous goals in the 2014 Olympic shootout goals to help the U.S. win. So you like TJ Oshie. You don't have anything against the guy. I don't think he's a dirty player. So I guess the takeaway from that whole incident or experience on Saturday is that thankfully Ryan Lindgren is not out long term. So we're told. They come back home on Sunday. They played better. They won against LA. I didn't think they played great. Igor was a little bit better. And this leads us into really the first issue that we have right now. And that is that Igor Shesterkin over the last 2 or 3 weeks has not been Igor Shesterkin. Now, I was looking at his game log last night and what he has not had in recent weeks, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, but this could be part of it, is that he has not had a consistent workload, whether it be their schedule, not playing that much in the last few weeks. Again, you had the 10-day break with the All-Star break too, that the team didn't play. And the fact that Halak has been playing so much better, Halak's going to get more starts, therefore leaving Igor with less shots and less games to play in. So some of this might be, and it would be good if it was, that he needs to get more of a consistent workload. The other theory that I'm going to throw out there, and maybe this is me being optimistic, which I'm usually not an optimistic person, but, the fact that he's not playing as much right now might not be the worst thing for this team come spring when they're trying to go on a deep Stanley Cup run. You would want your starting goalie to be rested. You would want your starting goalie to be less of a workload in the preceding months. So I think that, Igor will get better with time. On the goals on Saturday, I'm going to go back to it for a minute on Saturday, that he let up. There was a breakdown in defense, whether it was Tom Wilson coming in a breakaway, TJ Oshie right in the slot. There was a goal by Konetsov, Konetsov on Washington right in front of the net. I mean, there was just no defense. So I don't really know that on Saturday, even though he let up a bunch, 5 and 2 period, a lot of it was on him. Now, the other thing that comes out of Sunday, Keandre Miller. So in a completely weird situation, you're watching the game on Sunday, and you see late in the first period that the referees are reviewing something. You have no idea what they're reviewing because the play that happened right before they're reviewing was not a goal. It wasn't an offsides. It was a stoppage of play. Mm-hmm. The refs come back on after reviewing something on their iPad for about 5 or 10 minutes. And it was a lengthy review. And they decide and they announce that Keandre Miller is awarded a 5-minute match penalty for spitting at Drew Doughty. Now, I didn't see, and maybe it's because I didn't want to see the replay of him spitting. I just don't need to see it. If you're going to tell me that you watched the replay and he spit, I trust you. He spit, right? I mean, I don't think he made it up. So Ranger fans now are going into a little bit of a tizzy that Keandre Miller is going to probably be suspended because it did come out yesterday. We're taping this episode on Tuesday, the 28th. So it did come out on Monday afternoon that the NHL has set up and been in contact with Keandre Miller's people and the team, that there will be a hearing for the incident. So what you have to do is you have to go now and look at precedent and say, in the NHL, has this happened before? Has there been instances where a player has been kicked out of a game where he was on video and clearly spit in the direction of another player? Mm-hmm. And the answer is yes. On the Capitals, Garnet Hathaway, a couple years ago, I believe it was actually last season, was suspended 3 games. And if I remember correctly, it was against Anaheim and was suspended 3 games. Now, Ranger fans are claiming, well, hey, Keandre Miller didn't do it intentionally, so why should he be suspended? He was just spitting, and Drew Doughty, the defenseman who caught the saliva, was kind of in the way. Couple things here. We have no way, and I'm going to try and look at this openly and objectively, not as a Ranger fan, right? Mm-hmm. We have no way of knowing if it was intent or not. Keandre Miller can sit here and say that it wasn't intent, and I would go on the logic that it probably was not intent because he's not a dirty player. He doesn't really have a history of doing anything like this. But we don't have any way of getting in Keandre Miller's head in the moment, in the corner there at MSG where this happened, and try to decide whether there was intentional or not. The NHL is going to suspend Keandre Miller. Mm-hmm. And if I'm the NHL and I'm looking at this and I'm trying to be fair, if Garnet Hathaway on Capitals got 3 games for spitting, why is Keandre Miller not getting 3 games for spitting? How is it not fair? Whether Keandre Miller comes out and apologizes and look, again, I don't really – Keandre Miller's not a dirty player. But the NHL is not going to go against the precedent and say, you know what? We suspended this player last year for 3 games for spitting. Keandre Miller came out and wrote a nice apology after the game, apologized to the player and said it wasn't intentional, and we're not going to suspend him. That's not going to happen. So why don't we pull up the comment? Because I see it's about Keandre Miller, and that is it's on the right. Can we get it? Oh, there we go. Yep. What does it say? I love Miller and never thought it would occur, but I do believe it was accidental. I agree with you, Michael. I do too. I definitely think it was accidental. He's not a player that has any track record of doing anything like this. So you have to believe it was accidental. But the NHL is not going to sit here and rule on a suspension whether it was accidental or not. Okay. So next topic. You ready? Because we're just flying through stuff like you have no idea today. During the game on Saturday, I'm in the arena in Washington. And in the second intermission, it comes across I don't want to say out of nowhere, but all over Twitter that Vitaly Kravtsov has been traded. Not a surprise. We've talked about this for weeks that it was probably coming. And he was traded to Vancouver for a 7th, I believe it was a conditional 7th round pick, a very late round pick, and a player that you never heard of, right? So now you're going to sit here and say, well, you got nothing for Kravtsov. Chris Drury basically gave Vitaly Kravtsov to Vancouver for nothing. What did you think realistically? And this is what I was talking with people on Instagram. Did you think Chris Drury was going to get for Vitaly Kravtsov? We talked about this last week. He has 10 career points in 46 games. What NHL GM in their right mind is going to give up a lot for a player like that? What Vancouver is doing, who is the recipient here of this deal, is taking a flyer on Kravtsov and thinking maybe it just didn't work in New York. And some of the talent that he was projected to have with the 9th overall pick is going to come out in a different system, in a different environment, and it's going to work with Vitaly Kravtsov in Vancouver. It's worth a shot if I'm Vancouver, giving up a late round pick and a player I don't need. But Ranger fans can't sit here right now and be surprised at the return. Oh, you didn't get anything for Vitaly Kravtsov. These are the same people that are complaining about Vitaly Kravtsov, that he sucks or that he's not good. And then in turn, you think that Chris Drury is supposed to get something for the player that you're ripping on. And here's the other thing. I'm going to call out Ranger fans. And I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do this because I'm trying to be fair here. Somebody said the other day that the Rangers just give away draft picks left and right. And we haven't even gotten to discuss Patrick Kane yet, because that's coming in a minute, right? So that the Rangers, what they do is they got to stop trading first round picks. They got to stop trading second round picks. It is the most hypocritical nonsense for Ranger fans to say this. I'm going to give you a list of names. We'll start with Vitaly Kravtsov. Vitaly Kravtsov, Elias Anderson, Capo Kakko to be determined, Hugh Geisman, Dylan McElrath, Jamie Lundmark, Pavel Brendel, Bobby Sanguinetti comes to mind from 2006. All of these players are draft busts. Just because you have a first round pick or a second round pick, it does not mean that the pick is going to turn out. Take any of those guys, and I'm going to actually take Kakko off the list because that's not fair to do to Capo Kakko, although I could argue he should be on it, but I'm not going to do it. So let's go through it again. Vitaly Kravtsov, Elias Anderson, Hugh Geisman, Dylan McElrath, Jamie Lundmark, Pavel Brendel, and Bobby Sanguinetti. These were.
Where are they now?
Thank you. None of them except Vitaly
do an
Kravtsov.
episode. Where are they now?
Where are they now? Have been worth it. So I'm tired of Ranger fans playing both sides of the table. Well, how could Chris Drury give away draft picks? They give away draft picks left and right. But the draft picks that you're taking and you're using to draft players is not working out. This team has a really bad, and I will say it because I know I'm going to get people, I know someone's going to kill me for saying this. This team has a really bad track record of drafting in the early rounds. Henrik Lundqvist was a 7th round pick, right? Mm-hmm. You don't draft a goalie in the 7th round thinking that guy is going to be your all-time wins leader. If you did, you would have drafted him in the first. He fell into their lap. Yeah, they got Chris Kreider right and Derek Stepan. Okay, but there's so many failures of high-level picks. Again, look at the last couple of years. Kravtsov, Elias Anderson, just to name in recent memory. So you can't turn around here and then say to me over the weekend, but this team gives away draft picks. Why are you trading your draft picks? The draft picks don't turn into anything here. What are you holding on to them for?
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. You ready for now we're just going marching on, man. We just continue to pray. We haven't even gotten to the biggest topic yet. Patrick Kane will be a Ranger sometime later today or tomorrow. This is not a secret anymore. Not that it ever really was, but it has really come out that the deal is done. The hallmarks of the deal are done left and right, and he's coming to Broadway probably later after 5 p.m. today is where it's eligible. And now you're wondering, and you're like, well, why are they waiting? Well, it's all salary cap implications. I want to talk about Patrick Kane for a second. And again, I'm not trying to like rain on people's parades or kill people's excitements or anything like that, but I want to say a couple things about Patrick Kane. 2 weeks ago, we sat here, or 3 weeks ago, we sat here, and we talked about Vladimir Tarasenko coming to the Rangers, and it was a good deal. They didn't really give up a lot. Somehow we got them to take Sammy Blais back and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said that Vladimir Tarasenko is not – you can't have the expectation that Tarasenko is going to be who he was 10 years ago when you hear the name.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with Patrick Kane. Now, Patrick Kane is still very good, and he will add value to this team. But as we talked about 10 minutes ago, right now the issues on this team are defense and Igor the last couple of weeks. And Patrick Kane is not playing defense, and Patrick Kane is not going to play goalie. So does Patrick Kane make this team better? Absolutely he does. But as someone said on our Instagram the other day, I'm going to go ahead and start booking my travel to New York in June for a Stanley Cup parade. This is not what this trade does. This trade does not guarantee that you're going to get to the Stanley Cup final or even win the Stanley Cup final. And one other thing, and we talked about it with EJ Radick, and it's been brought up a bunch. The Eastern Conference is ridiculous right now, is absolutely ridiculous. If the season ends today, the Devils play the Rangers in round one in one conference, and in the other conference is Toronto and Tampa. Now, think about it like this. All four of those teams have had really good years. One of those four teams has been the Stanley Cup Finals from the East the last 3 years in Tampa, right? Two of those four teams are getting eliminated in the first round, are going to be out in the first round. And the winner of the, let's see, it would be the Toronto-Tampa series, okay, is going to have to play Boston in the second round. And then when they get out of that, is going to have to deal with either the Devils or Rangers or Hurricanes. The Eastern Conference is a nightmare right now to be in. I would rather, as a Ranger fan, have my team as far west as you can, because the Eastern Conference, and EJ Radick said it with us a couple of weeks ago, and it was a great point. Whoever comes out of the East, when they get to the Stanley Cup Finals to play a team in the West, I mean, they're going to be really beat up and worn down. Look at last year. Colorado, for example, they basically beat They won their first round series in 4 games. A first round series in 4. They beat St. Louis in 6, and then they swept Edmonton. They were rested, right? And look at the teams coming out of the East. So this is another thing to factor in here, that the Eastern Conference is so good right now. It's incredible. So we'll bring up some comments here. Michael, with our drafting is mediocre at best. I absolutely agree with you on that. And the other one was, I hope the NHL goes to a 1-8 system. East is stacked. Yeah. I mean, the NHL made this change about 4 or 5 years ago to this kind of wild card situation. If you listen, you don't hear any chatter, and we can ask Jim Biringer when he's with us in a minute, but you don't hear any chatter of the league looking to go back away from the system at all and going back to the 1-8. I don't think it's going to happen. I would like it to, but I don't really think it's going to happen. So the East is absolutely stacked. So if you're a Rangers fan, you'd be prepared to get Kane today or tomorrow. I mean, you would like it to go through today in the sense that he would probably be a little bit easier to get to Philadelphia, where they play tomorrow night. But you would like to think when you play in the Flyers and you didn't have Patrick Kane, you'd still be okay, especially when you saw what the Devils did to them the other night. But again, with Patrick Kane, I'm all for the move, because Chris Drury's not going to have to give up a lot, because Kane has really forced their hand. I mean, if you're a Blackhawks fan, you're annoyed right now because you're not going to get the return you should get, because Patrick Kane has basically said to the GM, trade me to the Rangers. And Chris Drury knows he has leverage in that situation. He's not dumb, but you're not giving up a lot. But at the same time, remember, Kane, also with Tarasenko, not signed beyond this year. So do not go out and buy jerseys. By the way, there was a clip on Twitter. I don't know if you saw this. Well, I'm going to guess you didn't, because you have enough things going on with a newborn at home. There was a clip the other day of the Ranger game against the Kings of a guy in the garden at the game in a Patrick Kane jersey. Wow. He went out, either went out, I don't know if he makes jerseys or what, but he had a Rangers Patrick Kane jersey, dancing to the goal song when he scored. I mean, the dude is, you got to love Ranger fans. So we'll stay tuned. A lot going on, and we just continue to cover it all here. There just has been such an eventful week since last week. I feel like mind here is on overload. So, all right, we're going to bring in the NHL trade deadline, which is kind of a national holiday, but not really on the calendar.
Not a hallmark one.
And the schools don't get off for it for some reason, but they get off, today. Like my wife's school is off today, and there's 2 inches of snow on the ground. They'll get off for that, but they don't get off for the NHL trading deadline. We need to work on that. Whoever with the president in Washington. So we're going to bring in Jim Biringer. He's been here before. Nightcap, recap, full press NHL. We welcome in Jim. Jim, how are you?
Hey guys, how you doing? It's good to be back.
We are good. And you are probably, of all the times you've been on our show, I'm going to guess you're proud of the Devils flag in the background more than you've been on the past with us, right?
I am very proud of that after what happened on Sunday with the acquisition of Timo Meier.
Yes. Well, let's start there. We'll go there first. So Timo Meier comes to the Devils. My first thought on Sunday when I read it was that how does you make this trade without a contract extension in place? Were you surprised at that? And if so, do you think it will get done?
So to answer the first part of the question, I was a little surprised because Tom Fitzgerald and I had been hearing all along that they wanted a contract extension as part of this acquisition. They wanted eight times eight, maybe 8.5, somewhere around there. Timo Meier's looking for 9. We know who his agent is. It's Claude Lemieux. Claude Lemieux's played for the Devils. We know how Pepe likes to negotiate. So that didn't get done. And a part of that caveat is Alexander Holtz was going to go in that deal if it was part of a contract extension. However, they realized that they can't get it done. They were talking. They said, okay, let's forego it. And then, the deal goes down, 9 players, multiple picks. You don't send out Holtz. You don't send out Simone Nemitz. You don't send out Luke Hughes, Dawson Mercer. The list goes on. Like with the Patrick Kane deal, which we'll get to, the Sharks, the diminishing returns for Timo Meier were coming in. The law of diminishing returns. As teams started to fall out, you knew New Jersey was the only team that was going to be the one in the driver's seat. So Tom Fitzgerald had control over this deal. Now, as far as an extension goes, they're going to get something done. They're going to be working on it. They were talking yesterday, as far as I know, on an extension. Would I be shocked if it's announced Friday? Yeah. I think that's probably later on down the road because the Devils have other work to do as well, getting Bratt and probably adding a piece or two as well at the deadline to try to shore up their bottom 6 when and if they play the Rangers in the opening round of the playoffs. But yeah, Tom Fitzgerald does a great job again at the trade deadline, getting the top player on everybody's board, depending on who you look at. Either it was Kane or Meier, didn't matter.
So with Jesper Bratt, one of our producers here, B-Rock, was asking me before we went live today, if they don't get an extension with Meier and you had to pick in the offseason between Meier or Jesper Bratt, who would you take?
I probably would take Meier, but here's the caveat. Both guys are RFAs and they're both controllable. The thing with Meier is he has a $10 million qualifying offer to keep him for 1 season. So that's the thing with Meier. You have to pay him $10 million for 1 season. Bratt right now, he's getting 5 and change. I think they'll settle in around 6, 7 maybe for a contract extension. And they're working on that one too. So, New Jersey's got, everybody's like, oh, they won't be active in free agency. They have their own deadline. They have their own internal work they need to do to get this roster ready for next season as well.
Okay, so the Devils, look, clearly, I think in the NHL, the biggest surprise team by far, not even close. I don't even know how you would argue that. Say they play the Rangers in the first round. We've talked about it a little bit here. We haven't talked about it a lot because things can change, and I don't want to talk about a playoff matchup 7 weeks ahead of time. But real quickly, in that series, to me, all the pressure in the world is on the Rangers. All of it. The Devils would be like playing with house money, can play loose, right? You're not even supposed to be there. And you've got a chance to knock off your rival in this year where they've acquired Kane, acquired Tarasenko, are really throwing all their chips in, and you can knock them off. What would you think of the matchup overall?
Obviously, you hit the nail on the head. The Rangers would be the clear-cut favorite in this series, especially when they get Kane. But New Jersey's speed, as we've seen in the regular season matchups, has given the Rangers fits. The Rangers are an East-West team. The Devils can play East-West and North-South, and the difference is the Devils' bottom 6 can hit and are very, very physical. And if they add another piece like a Max Domi, for instance, that's going to be the X factor in the series because what do the Rangers have on their bottom 6? Tyler Mott? They lost Ryan Reeves, and that's a presence you kind of need come the playoffs.
Yeah, the Ryan Reeves loss is underrated for sure, and it's that's a loss you feel more in the playoffs,
right?
Without a doubt. So the Devils, in having this year, Obviously, Jack Hughes has taken a quantum leap this year. Capo Caco has not. I'm just throwing that in there for argument's sake. But the other surprise story is Vanacek, how good he's been in goal. If you're the Devils right now, you can't. He doesn't really have a playoff track record, so you don't really know what he can do in the playoffs or not. But knowing what you know, are you confident that he can keep up the same pace of play for the long run here for the next 3 months, or is it a concern because he's never done it before?
I mean, he's absolutely had an outstanding year for New Jersey. I don't think anybody expected Vitek Vanacek to be the number one guy in New Jersey this week, this week, period, end of story. It was supposed to be Blackwood and Vanacek. Well, Blackwood gets hurt. He has injury concerns. Vanacek has stepped up tremendously. Now, look, he has a track record of winning 20 games. He did it in Washington twice. His save percentage was around the league average for both those years. The league average now is 910. He was at 916, 915. He's doing it again this year. Am I concerned heading into the playoffs? Yeah, because he doesn't really have playoff experience. But the Devils defensively are much better than they were last year, and they're not leaving their goalie out to dry, and they're not giving up the big high danger area shots anymore, rebounds. And Vanacek has just looked calm and composed in between the pipes, that the Devils and the players are feeding off that confidence that he has.
Okay, so we will see. I mean, look, he's going to certainly get his chance. You can't argue right now if the Devils are going to have playoff, games this year. I mean, they will be back. So speaking of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, I had mentioned before the Rangers and Devils possibly playing round one, and it certainly looks like in the Atlantic Division, you have Toronto and Tampa facing off in the 2 and 3, which would be fascinating. Toronto, again, continues to go for it. But let's go with a different team. The Boston Bruins are having a year here that is not getting talked enough about, especially here in the tri-state area, because you have the Devils and Rangers doing well. So the Bruins are not getting as much press as they should. Jim Montgomery comes in there. Obviously, the issues in Dallas. He comes in, replaces Bruce Cassidy. Looks like a genius hire by the front office up there in Boston. Is this the year? And Boston has not been to the finals in a while or have had playoff success. Is this the year they finally make some noise in the playoffs?
They better do it with this historic season. I had somebody told me it's cup or bust in Boston right now. You have Linus Ullmark scoring a goal. Historic season, points, wins. Marchand's clicking. You have Bergeron back. Krejci's back. The Czech line is going. You bring in Dmitry Orlov. You bring in Garnet Hathaway, two guys that are typical Boston Bruins. They're finding different ways to win. The injury issue is going to be for them. Can they sustain this thing? Taylor Hall's missed some time. Hopefully the injury to Brad Marchand's not too serious. This team has succeeded where many people didn't think they were going to succeed. Remember, you go back to the beginning of the year. No Marchand, no Grzelcyk, no McAvoy. They just needed to survive. They did more than survive. They took the Eastern Conference by storm. And all they had to do was insert a second-line center, by the name of David Krejci, and make a move to get Pavel Zacha and put him with David Pastrnak. This team has to win the Stanley Cup, or it's a disappointing season.
I would agree with that, especially with the year in the regular season, how well it's gone for them. I mean, the story, it's almost like scripted, right? Ullmark even scoring the other day. I mean, it's just everything is going right for them. They really are. I'm going to bring in some comments some people wrote. So the kid line, I guess this is in reference to your comment about the Rangers bottom six. The kid line, Barclay Goodrow, VC Mod is a damn good bottom six. It's pretty good. I would agree with that. I mean, but they are missing Ryan Reeves, as you talked about, but it would be a good matchup there, the bottom six. Next question we'll bring in from Michael. It's actually pretty funny. I'm bringing up why the Ducks had respect to the competitiveness across the Hudson. All right, that's fair.
Yeah, I just had a Ducks hat. I like the Ducks hat. I like the old logo. Throw it on, Why not? I was out in Anaheim for Paul Kariya night. They were giving it away, so might as well take it. So I just put it on. Hockey segment, so I put it on. But I agree. That kid line is really good. They can drive teams fits. And you mentioned Kakko. To me, again, it's all about development of the players and, where guys develop and where they're put into a system. Like right now, with the Rangers, Lafreniere, Kakko, and Hedl, they mesh so well together that you could put them as a second line. You could put them as a third line, however you want to see it. But they're gelling and growing together. And that's similar to what we saw with the Devils with Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt, and now we're seeing with Dawson Mercer. So there's similarities there. Obviously, Kako has not taken the step as Jack Hughes has, but he's a different type of player than Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes is a driver of an offense. Kako is a finisher, and he's actually, since his benching, has played a lot better.
He has been better for sure. As I always say, I always think back to the video I saw when Kako was drafted by the Rangers and he landed at Newark Airport and he's coming down baggage claim in the escalator and there's all Ranger fans waiting for him, to welcome him. And then it's like, well, you think you're getting someone worthy of that. And not to say that he's not, because he's still young, but why don't we put up the first comment by I watched the Edmonton and Boston. Someone wrote in, I watched the Edmonton and Boston game last night. Insane pace and physicality. Boston played well. Yeah, I mean, look, if you had a finals of Boston and Edmonton, I mean, those would just be two really fun teams to watch. We have a Devils question that came in for you, and that is who won the one underneath? Who won the Zaka for Hulatry?
I think, I can see both teams winning, to be honest, because Hala's given the Devils something that they never had. It was a guy in the face-off circle that can win face-offs. Zaka needed a change of scenery. He's doing well in Boston. He's playing with guys that he's familiar with, Pasternak, Krejci. They're all check guys. See, that was the difference. If Patrick Elias doesn't retire when he retires, that was Pavel Zacha's first game in the NHL. Elias leaves. He doesn't have his country mate there. He wasn't developed. The trade is a win-win for both teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I was curious your answer when I saw it came in because I wasn't sure. So, and then Chris wrote in, just think if the Devils drafted Meyer instead of Zaka. Yeah, well, all right. We talked before you came on about this whole K'Andre Miller spitting situation. The NHL decides yesterday there's going to be a hearing. To me, there's a precedent that was set with Hathaway when he got suspended 3 games. I mean, I would be surprised if Miller doesn't get the same. I'm not sure how you can say he's not going to get the same amount if he's just because he's claiming it wasn't intentional. I don't really think that's going to work. What are your sources telling you with the K'Andre Miller hearing? Anything?
I'm being told that he's definitely going to get suspended. We just don't know the number of games. I would be shocked if it's anything less than 3 games, me personally, because you have the Hathaway precedent, as you mentioned. It's going to take some time to go through because obviously stories and the video says it all. I know he apologized. I know he talked to Drew Doughty. I know he put out his Twitter, his Instagram thing. It doesn't matter. You can't spit in the National Hockey League. And when you get tossed in a game for that, you're going to have to be suspended. And he's going to be suspended.
Okay, 2 last questions for you before we let you go. Since we're a Rangers show primarily, we're going to go to Patrick Kane. Your thought on the Patrick Kane move for the Rangers is part 1. And part 2 of the question is, how much better does he make this team to be a legitimate Stanley Cup contender?
All right, so the Patrick Kane deal is going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. Is it going to happen today? Probably not. Most likely you're going to see him in Philadelphia Wednesday because of the cap gymnastics. It's a great trade for the Rangers because, A, it shores up their top 6. Like, I know you had Tarasenko, but you had a guy that really wants to be in New York. He wants to play with Panarin, and he gives you so many options. As far as a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, yeah, they're a favorite. They're going to be one of the favorites to win the Stanley Cup now with Showtime on Broadway. He's got a cup pedigree. He knows how to win in those big situations. He knows how to come through. Change of scenery is probably going to do him some good too. But again, the expectations and what happens because the East is such a dogfight, I don't know if they get there, but they're going to be a contender now.
Yep. We're going to go back. I'll go back because someone just wrote in a Devils question, and we don't really take a lot of Devils. The one I asked, so maybe he asked me, and I'm sorry, Mike, if I missed it on another episode. I asked this on another episode to a Devils fan. How do you feel about Severson? Not a huge fan of him, and what is his future in New Jersey?
Look, Severson's played well this year. I mean, he's one of those guys the New Jersey Devils fans like to go after. Blackwood's the other guy. But if you look at it, his play has been better. Look, he does make mistakes, no doubt. I don't think he's coming back, to be honest. I think Ryan Graves is also a UFA. They're probably going to re-sign him. If they can get Severson on a good deal, yes. But they have Nemec, they have Hughes, they have guys coming up that can fill his role. I think they're probably going to let him walk or see what they can get for him at the draft and get a pick, get a player coming back, make a smart hockey trade to improve your team. Because let's be honest, he's not going anywhere right now at the trade deadline, despite his name being out there.
Okay, last question and the hardest one. You ready?
Yep. Yeah.
I want you to tell me who's coming out of the East and who's coming out of the West right now. And you may want to do the West first because that may be the easier one. Not that it's easy, but easier.
If I had to say who was coming out of the West, I would probably. I'm going to say Colorado comes back out of the West.
Okay. And the East?
I mean, the easy answer is to say Boston.
Right.
That's the easy answer.
Well, I think we'll say it this way. If you're right and it is a cup final of the defending champion Avalanche against the Bruins, I don't think anyone would be surprised. And I think it would be a very good final. It would be definitely entertaining. The East, though, I don't ever remember in recent years where the NHL had one conference that was so talent loaded that like the East is this year. I mean, you look back last year, it wasn't even like this last year because the Rangers didn't have Kane. They didn't have Tarasenko. They had a great year, but they weren't expected to finish second in the Metro. The Caps and the Penguins were in it, but they were, as showing this year, they're older. So, Florida was in it. I mean, we saw they went out in year one, in the playoffs early to Tampa in round 2 last year. So even like a year ago, the East wasn't like this. Now it's just so loaded that trying to pick a winner, it's like going to the Meadowlands to a horse race and just picking a number of a horse you like. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, it really is. And who knows is right. And I came in early and I was listening to your draft pick conversation. Listen to what Julien Brisebois said the other day when he made the trade for Tanner Jeannot about those draft picks. While we all criticize it's a lot of draft picks, he's like, what are those draft picks going to do for me in a couple of years? We're in a win now mode. What are they going to do?
It's true.
I got to get rid of them.
Yeah, and the Ranger track record, like I said, Elias Anderson, Kravtsov, McElrath, Lundmark, Brenmark, Sakinetti, the list goes on. There are some, hits in there, but there's a lot more misses. And to hold on to a draft pick right now when you have this window of opportunity to win the cup, which you could easily just strike out on and not using it to improve your team right now where it has some asset and value, doesn't make any sense. And Ranger fans are always hypocritical, right? Because they'll be the first to complain that they give up a draft pick in a deal, but then they'll be the first to complain that they don't like who they drafted, right? So it's like you can't have both ways. You got to pick a side here. You're kind of
it's like Devils fans too. They complain
Yeah.
too when they give away draft picks, but it's like, oh, but if you go look at the track record, since Fitzgerald's been here, it's been really good. Before that, not so good. So,
Yeah.
I mean, now the Devils are in a win now mode. They're in a buyer. They're in a position similar to the Rangers, year ahead of schedule. But again, I always say to this, I'm a cautious analyst, fan, whatever you want to say. I said it last year with the Rangers. What are you going to do next year? And that's, to me, the playoffs are great. You can win, whatever. However far the Devils go is great. I want to see what you do next year now.
Yeah. Well, you know what? If you're the Rangers have followed it up being a year ahead of the Devils. So we will see a year from now where the Devils are. That is Jim Biringer, Nightcap Recap, Full Press NHL. Thank you, Jim. And we will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Can't wait to be back.
You got it. So, just a lot going on with the trade deadline on Friday. The Rangers, for the most part, other than Kane becoming official, there's probably not a lot you're going to see done here in the next few days, Dougie Sticks. I would be surprised. I mean, maybe you add some tough depth, like you want to replace a Ryan Reeves for cheap somewhere, but just a lot going on. And one thing that is good is that next week, when you are beyond the trade deadline, a lot of this talk goes away. And then from that point forward through the remaining 5 weeks of the regular season and then the Stanley Cup playoffs for 2 months, you can focus on the actions on the ice as opposed to the stuff off the ice.
True.
So you learn a lot.
Exciting.
You learned a lot today, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Always do.
Yeah, you and your lack of sleep over there.
We're
Try to keep
surviving. We're
yeah,
surviving.
and you stayed awake, which I
I'm
think is-
entertained.
You are. I was going to ask you, one question before we leave. Giants.
Yeah.
Someone asked it the other day on Instagram myself, but I didn't answer because I wanted it to come from you.
Yes.
Daniel Jones is offer. What's he want? 45 million? Was that what it was?
That's the rumor. And because the rumor, and it escalated because he got rid of his representation. He got a new agent. So the speculation, the rumor was that he didn't like the offer that was given, which was probably like 30 million or 35 million, and he got rid of his agent because he wants to get 45 million. I don't know how true that is, but it doesn't look good that he got rid of his agent in the middle of negotiations.
The NFL, as we've talked here about this offseason in particular, is going to have some QB carousel stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make the next couple of weeks, I believe free agency starts the second week in March in the NFL. It does make for some interesting offseason stuff. You know, you're dealing now with not having the games anymore, but you are going to get in March timeframe some really exciting free agent stuff, and then you'll have the draft and the schedule coming out in April. So hopefully it'll make the offseason seem a little bit shorter.
I don't see Daniel Jones playing as good as he did with the Giants anywhere else. So if I'm him, maybe I'd take like a 1 or 2 year deal to maybe prove myself or keep it going. I don't know. And then you don't want to, like, Saquon's great, but like, you don't want to put all your money in a running back because they get hurt all the time.
Right. Well, why don't you have a question for you, Doug? That's at the bottom
Yes.
one. At kind of, although you just kind of answered it. Do you pay DJ 45? Well, let's take the second half. Do you pay Saquon 16?
Saquon, what's the going rate for running backs?
That I don't know.
I think Saquon denied 13, or the 13 or 12 they denied that. I don't know. Say that seems a little much.
Yeah.
And they don't have wide receivers. So how are you going to bring in a wide receiver?
You have to bring in from our Garrett Bedrin, who you know from Get Up with Garrett.
Yes.
Great show here, normally on Thursdays. Tune in Thursday mornings. I always do. I actually have the alert set up on my phone. I don't know if how I did it, but it comes up when it's live.
Yeah.
So I encourage you, if you like our show and all you guys who sent in questions today, Garrett covers the same stuff on Thursdays. Tune in. Garrett says, pay DJ anything he wants. Now, Garrett, one thing, though, when Garrett says it has a little bit more meaning because Garrett is a season ticket holder.
Yeah.
So some of the money he's paying for his season tickets is going towards the salary of the player. So when, Garrett has inside.
Maybe Garrett could throw in a free room for DJ at the new Hedges, too.
The
Hedges and Hawthorne. Penthouse suite for Danny Jones.
Daniel Jones. That would be good. So that is a wrap. Again, so much stuff going on here today. Thank you for all the questions throughout. Thank you guys for all the stuff on Instagram throughout the week. I'm trying to keep up with you guys all and trying to do it in an efficient manner. And I'm sure it's going to only continue as, again, the Patrick Kane deal is expected to become official today, anytime after 5 p.m. or tomorrow. It'll be in the next 2 days at this point, you would think. We thank the Bamboozle Project, as always, for their sponsorship. Go check them out at thebamboozleproject.com, and also use the promo code MYPB to save yourself a whopping 25% when you are on the site getting stuff. And if you didn't get the winter hat yet,
now's the time.
Today should show you that we were right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael, for the Let's Go Rangers talk there at the end. We appreciate you. We hope to see you next Tuesday when we're back on again, firing your questions away. Until then, we will talk to you next week.